Today is October the 20th, 2015, and both professionally and personally, this is a date of some significance. Today, Freelance Mum features as one of the Small Biz 100 in the run-up to Small Business Saturday. It's a proud puff of the chest as a small business owner, and personally, I'm getting married in just 4 days, which sums up the world of Freelance Mum, ever juggling the work-life balance. So thank you for taking the time to hear the story of Freelance Mum, a small but mighty business, which in real terms is still in its infancy. It's about to hit its toddler years. Whatever its age, it's very much here to stay. And I'd like to share with you the story behind networking with Freelance Mum and some of the pearls that I've learnt along the way. When I was 20 and a student in Devon, I had a poster stuck to my wall which resonated. And in actual fact, it was an advert for Apple that I'd torn out of the Guardian magazine, and I can still picture it now. And the quote was quite striking and it stayed with me. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules. You can quote them, disagree with them, vilify them, glorify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward, and while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius, because the ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones that do. And that was Steve Jobs. As a young adult setting out in the world, I always felt like a square peg in a round hole, and perhaps I still am today. But perhaps by looking at life differently, that has helped me change a small part of the world. I'm Faye Dicker, and I'm a broadcaster and founder of Freelance Mum. I've been a freelancer for most of my working life and a mum for much less. Jemima is 3.5 and Suki is 18 months. So Freelance Mum was born with my children when I discovered there wasn't a community for fellow freelance parents. And if it didn't exist, then I'd have to create one. It began as an online hub with podcasts with fellow mums in business. I wanted Freelance Mum to be the place to go. As a broadcaster by trade, I took to the streets of Bristol with a microphone in one hand and a push chair with my daughter Jemima in the other, interviewing mums in business. I wanted to share their stories. In fact, it was a compulsion. I couldn't not do it. I felt this connection with fellow mums juggling the work-life balance. When I wasn't behind the microphone in my studio or looking after little ones, I was busy editing podcasts. One of those early interviews was with a fellow freelance mum, Michaela Deasy-Smith, who has since gone on to sponsor the Freelance Mum event, providing coffee and cakes to the attendees with her business, Relish. We spoke at the Lido while her little one sang Twinkle Twinkle, and there it was, in the rawest sense. That was Freelance Mum, just a website at this stage, but boy was I dreaming big. I wanted Freelance Mum to be the equivalent of Mumsnet, a money-saving expert, the place to go to online, the ultimate resource. I would look at the website traffic daily, excited by the number of hits, but how would people find out about it? So here is the first lesson. Tell the world your story. I wanted to tell the world about Freelance Mum, so I approached the Bristol magazine and asked if I could write a monthly column sharing the stories of some of the mums I interviewed. And it was through writing the column for the Bristol magazine which led to this email. Hi Faye, I'm Victoria. I came across your website after seeing a piece about you in the Bristol magazine. It was so nice to read about someone else living the same life as me. I moved to Bristol last April when I was pregnant with my second child, Ted. He's now here and 6 months old. I currently work a couple of days a week, and I find it pretty tricky fitting the hours in whilst looking after a little one. Being new to the area as well means I don't have much support, so I don't have many options for last-minute childcare. I thought I'd just touch base really to say hello, and also to mention that I'm thinking about setting up a new business in the next 12 months, and I thought you might be interested in documenting my progress. I hope your work and the associated juggling is going well, and thank you for setting up this site. Many thanks, Victoria Jackson, otherwise known as Seeing Sticks. Well, Victoria began by guest blogging on Freelance Mum before becoming more hands-on with networking with Freelance Mum, which leads me to networking with Freelance Mum. Well, what happened next was the byproduct of talking to so many freelance mums. It was networking with Freelance Mum. It was all well and good creating an online community, but we needed proper facilitated networking, a chance to meet up, talk shop, do some business, without being restricted by childcare. So that's when I dared to dream. If it didn't exist, could I create it? And if I created it, would people come? What did mums and children need in order to have network effectively? And what is networking anyway? Well, here's the dictionary definition. Networking: a supportive system of sharing information and services among individuals and groups having a common interest. And then it goes on to say, working mothers in the community use networking to help themselves manage successfully. I think that just about hits the nail on the head. I spoke to everyone, anyone who would listen. I would bore with ideas of Freelance Mum, and I've said it before, you're only ever 2 steps away in conversation from talking about Freelance Mum with me. But how the devil would networking with children work? So here's lesson number 2. Let your business grow organically. Follow where your business is naturally growing. If it wasn't for Freelance Mum, the website, networking with Freelance Mum wouldn't have started. But it took me in a direction I wasn't expecting. After all, I was going to change the world with a website. But networking felt like the next step. And it's always reminded me of the story of a shop in Totnes where I lived in when I was a student. There was a coffee shop right in a prime position at the top of the high street. And in actual fact, it started out as a furniture shop, but it had the best views of the high street. And they thought they'd sell the odd cup of coffee alongside. But more and more people were coming to go and buy cups of coffee, and less people were buying furniture. So eventually they had to ask the question, were they going to be a furniture shop that sold coffee or a coffee shop that sold furniture? Which one was I going to be? The Bower House turned into a coffee shop. And I feel as though I'm turning into networking. And does it really matter anyway? So back to networking. The first meeting was a walk around the docks of the pit stop at Bristol. Suki, my second born, was a few months old, and I walked with her having a meltdown strapped to my chest while greeting guests. The guest speaker spoke on how to make the most of networking, and her name was Gail Gibson. Gail's advice was to be sincere. Go to at least 2 meetings and don't just turn up once. She took herself at her own word and has been back ever since. In fact, as a performance coach, Gail's role has become incorporated into the meetings. When we offer mums the opportunity to walk and work it out, they can put their business problems to Gail and work out a problem during our networking session. So the first meeting was a hit, and not only that, it attracted sponsors from Mama Bears and Relish, both of whom were so on board with what I was doing. They wanted to lend their support in any way. I asked one of the attendees, who was a photographer, if she'd mind taking photos and documenting the event. Her name is Nicola Jane, and she's been back ever since. We went back to sixth form days as it happened, and our paths crossed again at baby swimming lessons. A smart move for Nicola to come on board, because a picture, as they say, captures everything. A picture speaks 1,000 words, and in the world of social media, that counts for quite something. And here comes to my third lesson. Even Wonder Woman needs a day off. Aware that I was onto something, but not knowing how to manage everything, I stumbled upon Sarah Cook of SHC Social Media. As a fellow mum in business, we were both on the same page and had launched our businesses at the same time. At the time, Suki was a few months old, and I was up doing umpteen night feeds with Suki. Meanwhile, Sarah Cook was looking after my social media. We were often communicating in the middle of the night, messaging with one eye open. I couldn't do everything. I had a toddler, a newborn, I was still doing my voiceover work, and I just started networking. Yet, I couldn't not do it. And it reminds me of something that Steve Redgrave has said to himself when training for the Olympics. If not now, then when? And if not you, then who? It was those early days that Sarah took care of the social media, raising the profile of Freelance Mum, trying to send traffic back to the website and telling the world about the events. These days I've taken back the reins of social media, but it was Sarah who very much gave it the launch that it needed in those early days. And here comes to my fourth lesson. It doesn't have to be so intense. We have a couple of weeks holiday every year in Devon as a family. We've made holiday friends, we go to the same place, we strike up conversation, and me being me, I frequently find myself striking up a conversation about, guess what, Freelance Mum. And once we were there, funnily enough, I'd struck up conversation with a fellow mum in business. And when we returned, she told me she was actually winding down her business to find other work which fitted in better around the children, dare I say, a regular 9 to 5. She realised she wasn't going to change the world with her business, like she thought she was initially, and instead she wanted to just enjoy her children. She wasn't going to change the world. Her words stuck in my mouth. I shared this story with my other half, Eddie. I can still remember walking along the cliff edge and questioning everything. A woman whose life had parallels of my own. She had young children, she was running a business, she thought she was going to change the world, and she decided in actual fact to jack it in. And she was at the same point where I was wondering, what next? And I shared this to my other half, Eddie, and he said, it doesn't have to be so intense. Well, my normal, steady Eddie said, it doesn't have to be so intense. It was like a knife to the heart, and I couldn't exactly argue it. He wasn't saying stop, he wasn't saying change direction, he was just saying it doesn't have to be so intense. My trouble was I had passion, I had drive, and that had helped things to take off, but it become all-encompassing. Meanwhile, back in Bristol, I was trying to be something to everyone. I wanted networking with Freelance Mum to meet at a different venue across the city, so there was variety, attract a different audience of mums. We had a particular set of needs. Children, pit stop, icebreaker, the all-important coffee break, when did the break come, guest speaker, microphones. We tried 4 different venues, and I'd actually intended to keep moving around the city, bringing networking with Freelance Mum across Bristol. But it was after our first meeting at St Paul's Church in Southville, I decided to stay there and make it our home. By this stage, we tried the Docks, Ashton Court, St Andrews, but Southville worked. By now, Gail Gibson, the performance coach, had taken me under her wing, and she was constantly phoning me, have a monthly strategy meeting. She would say to me time and time again, keep it simple. I was busy worrying about logistics, I wasn't enjoying the journey. I decided to make my motto that all meetings should be simple and successful every time. So, how does networking with children work? Let's start with a really simple question, a quick show of hands. Has anyone here been to a regular networking event without children? And are they fun? Do you pass business cards? Have you been to playgroup meetings or anything with your children? You have. So you've been to both. Imagine the two worlds colliding. Actually, it can work, but you do need to take the best elements and you do need structure. And some of those things are a warm environment, a safe place, a drink and a biscuit. These are the things that actually are quite important components when it comes to networking with children. It's about creating the right environment, an environment for children to be able to play safe and adults to have a safe and structured conversation. And speaking personally, I don't feel as though I can neglect my children and ignore them, but if I know they're happy and content, I can have a conversation in a focused environment, knowing that they are happy too. So, networking with Freelance Mum. We meet in a church which allows us to use the playgroup equipment. The little ones can play while the attendees sign in and everyone arrives. Once everyone turns up, there's an icebreaker. Mum's always run late. I try to keep timings relatively loose while sticking to a structure as the format is important. We begin our meetings with an icebreaker, which is really important. It's a chance for mums to get to know each other and for children to get involved. They're normally light-hearted, fun, a good way for everyone to get to know the group. It's followed by netwalking. I can't take the credit for this concept or term, but I've adopted it as part of the meeting. On a practical note, it allows mums to talk while children are in their buggies. We walk at the pace of the slowest walker or toddler, and it gives focus questions so adults can have conversation and it's not stilted. On returning to church, it's time for the all-important coffee and cake, and that might sound light-hearted, but actually it's really important for people to feel cared for and looked after. It makes a real difference to people's well-being, especially mums, who are usually the ones who are making the drinks for the little ones. Then it's the guest speaker. Now, we're lucky enough to have a microphone, and it's really important for that actually, so that people can be heard above children. Meanwhile, there's craft activity, and that's provided by Seeing Sticks. You remember Victoria, who emailed me right back in the beginning. She's very much on board now. It means that mum can listen while children can beaver away. Sometimes we get clever and we have theme meetings, and other times it's just a great cross-section of activities. Whatever we do, there's always an energy and a buzz in the room which cannot be recreated. It's like no other group I've been to, whether it's mum and baby or a more conventional networking. We've celebrated our first birthday in July, and we've attracted guest speakers such as Rob Law from Trunky and Stacey Bramwell from Butlers in the Buff. All of them supporting and understanding the need for freelance mums to connect in a supportive environment, talk business and be able to bring the children. So, what do the mums think? Well, this is from Helen Farmer, a marketer. Faye, big chief freelance mum, you are a real ball of energy and optimism and a master of producing interesting content and events to showcase and support talented mums in business. The people, the cake, the sense of community, I love it all. A really important part of the journey to be myself, be self-employed and grow a business and be a mum. I always look forward to the Freelance Mum events, the friends I see and the way it makes me feel inspired, welcome and ready to face the next challenge. And this is another lovely review from Nicola Proctor. I've been going to Freelance Mum networking events since the very beginning and super proud to be the official photographer for the monthly meeting. I've known Faye since college, but only bumped into her again by chance at baby swim classes, and I'm so glad I did. I've never been a fan of networking events, let alone having to do this after having just had a baby. Faye's networking with Freelance Mum is a breath of fresh air. It was a great vibe. It's super relaxed, and Faye is an inspiration, passionate about what she does, and a very lovely person too. I've made some great friends, and I look forward to going along to every month. Being self-employed can be lonely at times, but with a great network of like-minded mums around you, it helps. The website is a great resource too, so do check it out. What I love about the last line in that review is that I've never been a fan of networking events, let alone having to do this after having a baby. There's something about having children and running a business that puts you in a different place. And the honesty in that line sums it up. And it's something that as a mum I was feeling too. I didn't want to go to networking events. I was a mum, I had to put myself out there again. How was I going to do it? And by daring to dream and think of something that didn't exist, it had bridged that gap for fellow freelance mums. So after a year of networking events, it brings me to the 5th lesson. Where you place your attention is where your business will flourish. Freelance Mum started as a website. It grew into a column and then into networking. Recently, it decided to widen networking not just to freelance mums, but to professional parents. As there were more inquiries, and I realised we're all in this bonkers world together, employed or self-employed, we can all help each other along. Actually, it doesn't matter. If we can help each other and pass work, whether it's Monday to Friday jobs or we're freelancing, why not welcome them into the same environment? My attention went to networking, and this is where the business has bloomed. The website is still good, but the stats have bumped along. I have a place on a website or a business incubator program for next February, and have recently found myself asking the question, how will I scale up? Do I focus on the website or do I focus on networking? If it's to make any real money, then scaling up and web-based stuff is really the only way forward. But how can I scale up? It's me. It's a question I've been asking myself repeatedly for far too long, even though I've been trying not to be too intense. Does it really matter anyway? By being part of Small Business Saturday, it's given me real pride in the small bit of small business. For the time being, I'm not scaling up. Freelance Mum is small but mighty. There is only one me, and I'm a mum to 2 small children. And I can honestly say as I don't mind what happens next. It can be as big or as little as this. Which in many ways brings me to the last point. What is Freelance Mum? Well, it reminds me of a quote. When you find people who not only tolerate your quirks, but celebrate them with cries of "me too," be sure to cherish them, because those weirdos are your tribe. Freelance Mum is about uniting a tribe. And thank you for listening to my journey.
That's lovely, thank you, Faye. We've got a few questions that have come in on social media. The first one is, this person's thinking about attending their first networking group. What should I look to get from it, they've asked?
I think one of the first things that you look to get from it is that sense of connection and meeting people who are at the same point in life with you. Although in conventional networking you might go along to grow your business, and ultimately that is what it's about. It's indirectly that you gain that resource, and someone once used the word that you feel like you've got a whole team of cheerleaders there. I think that's what you get when you go to networking with Freelance Mum. You get a whole team of cheerleaders, all supporting your cause and all there with you every step of the way.
Excellent, we've got some more questions here. Next one is, what's the best way to find a child-friendly networking group? Might depend whether you're in Bristol or not, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think that probably is the way, really. At the moment, I don't know of many other child-friendly groups. I felt that I had invented the wheel back in the day. I've since found there are some things that are similar. They're not all quite the same. There are similar groups that you meet and have a coffee with your children. But for me personally, and now speaking of a mum of a 3.5-year-old, obviously that model only works for so long with a child. There's only so long you can pacify a baby with a baby chino. So there are similar concepts out there. As far as I'm aware, this is the only group that operates like this in this basis, so offered structured and facilitated networking alongside your child.
Excellent. Have we got any questions from the room? Oh, thank you very much, Faye. That's been great.
Thank you for asking me.
Thank you.